Hi guys, my name is Shay Gallimore, founder of Leave a Light On Project. I am joined by my dear friend Jimmy. He is an amazing man with a remarkable story. Please keep in mind this is not an easy thing to do. Let's start from the beginning. Jimmy, welcome my friend. How are you?
I'm pretty good, Shay. How you doing, man? Good?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you.
Right on. Okay, well, we'll start right from the beginning. I'm 51 years old right now, but I was born in White Rock. My name's James Carson Finch. I was born in White Rock, British Columbia, and at the hospital in White Rock to Gail Eddy. Well, her name was Gail Finch at the time, and my real father, Glenn Finch, who was a severe alcoholic, which you'll hear more about later. But I was born to those two, and here in White Rock. But then in White Rock, then we moved around a fair amount, and I don't remember much before 3 or 4 years old. But I remember snaps here and there. But I remember we moved quite a bit. I remember a lot of yelling. My dad was hardly ever around. My mom was always beat up. And I didn't understand why when I was a little guy, right? And I never put two and two together until later, but by then it was too late. It wasn't too late, we were out of that. So anyway, my mom and dad used to come home, and he used to work doing drywall, and he used to drink, and then he would come home, and he would take out his frustrations on my mother. So if he'd come home and he'd been drinking all day on the job, and he'd be drunk by the time he got home, or still drunk, and he'd take it out on my mother. And then usually it wasn't bad when he come home from work. It was when he come home after the bar, he'd go to eat and then go to the bar. And then when he come home, that's when he was bad. But anyway, I have my older sister Paula, which is the oldest. My older brother Glenn, or Sandy, as his nickname was growing up. So it's Paula Finch, Glenn Finch, and James Finch, myself. And then later in life, my stepfather had my younger brother Gary Eddy, which is my half brother, and we'll get to him later. But so my sister would protect us. My dad would come home and he'd be having one of his sessions with my mom, and my sister would come. My older brother and sister, they would grab me, and the three of us would stick together. And we'd go to a closet, right? And it was usually my sister's closet in her room, because she had her own room, and my brother and I had a room that we shared, but we felt safest in her room, around her, because she was like the protector for us, right? So finally it got to be too much, and my dad, on one of his drunk rants, we had moved. My mom had left my dad, grabbed his kids, and left my dad, and he was coming across the back field with a rifle, drunk, at night, and she managed to call the police, and they managed to head him off. So between when he left his car to hike over this field and to get to the house, the cops had got there, and now he was stuck, and they got him cordoned off in a shed, and they had a standoff and that. But he eventually came out, and he got penitentiary time for that, because he shot at the police. And so while he was in the penitentiary, my mom took that opportunity to get away from him. So we were trying to hide from him. I remember the day going up to see him. I remember driving up to the penitentiary, and I remember what it looked like. And driving up, it was here in BC, and my mom went inside, I guess, at that time, and told my dad we're leaving, so we won't be there when you come back. The stuff's already packed, we're already gone. So, and my grandmother Jean, my real father's mother, helped my mom get away, because all of her sons were alcoholics, and she knew that it wasn't going to get any better. And so we got away. My dad finally got out, and then I met my stepdad for the first time. And the first little while, we had nobody, and all I wanted was a dad. I was like, please, could I get a dad? That's all I wanted is a dad. I remember that for the longest time, and my mom wouldn't date anybody, and she just was concentrating on raising us. And but she went into the reserves, and I remember coming home one day crying because the kids were picking on me, telling me that my mom wears army boots, and she did. So nothing I could say about that one. But so um, anyway, my mom met my stepfather, Gary Eddy, who raised me. They met in the reserves. My stepfather was in the regular force, and my mother was in the reserves, which meant she went on weekends and holidays, right? So they met, and they fell for each other right away. Like, it was no questions asked sort of thing. They never even talked about should we get married or whatever. When are we going to get married? Like, almost immediately. So, and he came, and we went to go see him at his PMQ, which is the Married Quarters, on the base in Chilliwack. And he was working on his car, and he was showing me stuff and that. And just before that happened, my dad had got weekends, right, to visit us, and he come and got us, and for a weekend visit, and took us to my grandma's, my Jean, and took us there and wouldn't bring us back. So my mom lost us, and she was freaking out. And my stepdad said, "Do this right. We'll do it in the courts, okay? We'll win them back properly." And they got a lawyer, and they got the papers signed up and everything, and our papers drawn up, and they were going to the courts. But for that year there, I was with my grandma and my father, mind you, and my Uncle Mel, who was a hunchback, and he was very, very mean. And I got caught playing with matches, and my stepdad burned my fingers with a jumbo lighter. And my sister was trying to pull my hand back, and she was getting in trouble, and she was screaming, and my dad was trying to pull my hand over the flame, and he kept dropping the lighter. And it was a shit show, but he managed to do it and burn my fingers for playing with matches. And so I learned a lesson there, because I was played with him 2 or 3 times, right? And I was becoming a real firebug. And then he finally got sick of it. My grandma said, "I can't raise these kids." My grandfather died in the war, so she was on a grandmother's or a widow's pension, and she couldn't raise us, right? So she said to my dad, "You got to take the kids to Gail and give them back to Gail and my mom, because I can't raise them anymore." So he brought us back. And then I was up with my stepdad again, and he was working on his car, and I was like, "Gary, what's this? And Gary, what's that?" And asking all these questions. He was getting fed up with it, and finally he stopped and he looked at me and said, "Look, if we're going to be living together and I'm going to be raising you, you're going to start calling me Dad. So call me Dad from now on, okay?" And I remember that moment even now. How old was I? Oh, fuck, I was... That was such a happy moment. I was like 5. I think I was 5. Yeah, 5 or 6. It was in Chilliwack on base, and I got my wish. And he was a big man. He was a big, strong, young guy. He was like 4 or 5 years younger than my mom. So he was like 20 or 21, and he was huge, a huge, muscular man, really big. And so I was really happy. I remember how happy that day was for me. I was walking on cloud 9, but he was very strict. So he caught me with matches, and he said, "The next time I catch you doing something wrong, you're gonna get in trouble, and I'm gonna have to punish you." So I said, "Okay." So I got caught stealing change off his dresser. I was stealing nickels to go buy candy at the store, and I was putting them in an empty radio box that had no guts. And he called me over. He said, "What's in the box?" And I said, "Nothing." He says, "Can I open it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And handed it over. He goes, "Yeah, my change is in there, isn't it?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "From now on, you got to tell me the truth, okay? But I'm going to give you a choice. Do you want the belt or do you want to get grounded?" And if I'm grounded, I'm there for a week, and that means I can't go with him when he goes golf and then jump on the trampoline they had at the golf course. But I was terrified. He's such a big guy, and I'd never gotten a licking from him, right? And or the belt, and so I picked the grounding, and he made me stay home for the week. And I remember them driving away, and I was crying, and my mom was like, "No, well, you shouldn't have stole change, Jimmy. You gotta, you know." And so I started to learn, properly, and he raised me properly, and not to swear, all the right things, get up and let her and all this, sit down, and everything you could, right? And so we moved from Chilliwack to Toronto, Ontario, and I was in grade 3, and that's when my whole world really changed. We stayed at the Ascot Inn at the airport, and the first time I was in a hotel in a big pool, kiddie pool. I remember the name because I was so happy there. We were all together, right? And they had my younger brother. My mom had my younger brother, Gary. He was in the world now, and he was just a baby, like maybe 1 year old. And so we were a happy family, the 4 of us, right? 4 kids and 2 adults, and we were happy. And I remember that being my happiest times. And on the base in Toronto, there was a military base there one time. We were on the base, so nobody else that was outside the base could go on there unless you were from there. So it was like a piece of paradise with big fields and everything where nobody lived, no houses on the field. And then as soon as you go off the base, it's like bumper to bumper traffic and buildings right close and yelling and screaming at each other. But anyway, this was all new to me, a city, right? So I went to grade 3, and the bullies were taking my lunch money. And this guy, his name was Tyrone, and he seen that I was getting my lunch money taken away. And he jumped on, it was Richard Watt or something like that. Anyway, he was a bully. And Jerome, this big gorilla guy. And they would take all the lunch money from the kids, right? And he jumped on Richard, punched Jerome, and they took off. And he said, "They'll never bother you again. You stick with me, everything will be all right." And he was a nice guy, and he was tough. So I stuck with him, and we had a lot of good times joking around and that. And we were down in what they call the LDHs off the base because there was no room on the base, the housing on the base. So we used to call the LDHs the local dog houses because it was like bottom of the barrel. It was townhouse, like row houses, and row after row after row after row, and just poor people, tough as nails, trying to scrape by, right? And so I learned a lot there. I got picked on a lot, beat up, and thrown around a lot, and so I learned to get tougher. And but I never really, in my heart, I never was that guy that could finish it. So I always gave in. If somebody would say mercy for everything, I'd be like, "Oh, okay." And then finals the trick and I lose or something like that, right? And but that's just the way I was. I hated myself for it back then because I was a softie to everybody, but that's just the way I was. And so I learned how to be tough over the years, and I finally got that toughness. But at first I didn't want that. And then I went to public school there, and did pretty good in school, in public school, and I was doing all right. And I was being a bully for a while after I learned how to fight. We had moved on to the base, and it was nice and quiet, and the housing was much better, and it was like a whole nother world then. And my life started to get a lot better. And I was going to a new school it was a smaller school. It didn't have all the top guys. It was out of the what we called the pit. It was a sunken part down where the LDHs and all that were, and all the housing. I was up on the hill now and on the base, so I was away from that. And I really started to find some really good friends up there and liking stuff. And then for the first time, I tried pot. And now, when I was in the LDHs, I drank beer once. The Labatt's big boys, they used to call them. And I drank two of them. They were pretty big to me. Back then, I was a small fella my whole life. And they were pretty big, and I drank two of them out of the three I owned. And I remember feeling great. And I said, this is the answer for me, man. When I said a joke, everybody laughed. I fit in. Yeah, this is it, right? And then, of course, I started to feel sick and puke. My mom caught me, grounded me, because my dad was away on a tour with the military. So my mom was doing she had to be mother and father, so she grounded me, right? But with my mom, you could sneak out, which I did because she had to go to work, right? But my life was getting so much better, and my grades had picked up, and then, but I was being a bully around the school. And then when I went on to junior high, everybody started growing except me. So all the people I was bullying, we all started to hit puberty, and everybody else was growing, but I didn't grow. And so they all, remember me sort of thing. And so I'm getting fed knuckle sandwiches every second day sort of thing, but doing the best I can. And it's just the way it goes. And, life is life, right? And I was getting my karma back. But I had a guy helping me in public school when I was that bully for those couple of years, right? Just like Richard had Jerome, I had a guy like that, right? And I used to give him hockey cards for helping. And we collected hockey cards, and I used to give him hockey cards as payment. But so all these people were getting payback for me, and then it all worked out anyway, because I started hanging around with a gang of guys, and we kind of took care of each other, and then everybody started leaving us alone, right? And we weren't looking for no trouble. We just wanted to play baseball or street hockey or whatever, ride bikes. And then we'd also do a thing called scamming. Is where we go and steal the change thing out of the Jewish synagogues, stuff like that, to get money so we can buy pot, because we're all getting stoned every day. And first time I got high, I said, oh yeah, this is...
How old were you at this time, Jimmy?
Huh?
How old were you at this time?
At this time, I'd say I was about 12 to 13, around there, yeah, 12, 13. But I got my first taste of, I got in trouble with a Jewish synagogue. I was stealing the money. I got caught with a friend. We went in front of the judge, and the judge was Jewish. And it's the first time I went to court. He says, when he read the charge, he looked at me and he says, "You gotta be kidding me." And I went, "No, sir." He goes, "Well, I hope you brought," he said something, "I hope you brought your packages," or something like that. And it meant that I was going away for a bit, right? So he scared me pretty bad. But then he said, "I'm going to put you in a program called the DARE program." And what we did, that was in Ontario, and what we did is they took me for the first 2 months, I think. I stayed there, and that was over Christmas and New Year's and that. And I wasn't in school, and we go from one camp to the next camp walking, and we had our rucksacks with all our clothes in it, and we'd have to go down to the lake and cut a hole in the ice to get our water. And it got you out of the city, and taught as a teenager out of the city, and taught you survival and just trying to get you out of getting into trouble, right? Catch them young and try and make them better, right? Was their motto. So I did good in the program. I loved the DARE program. I went back. They had other programs. I went back for them, volunteered and helped people out, new young guys that were coming in. I was about 14 then, about 14 or 15, and then I stopped I was doing bad in school. I started falling apart again, and smoking more pot. I was smoking it every day now. And then when I was 16, I failed grade 9. And my dad, he lost it. And I had gotten a couple of lickings up to them, but this one was, I got a backhand, and I got in trouble for it. I got bad trouble for it. And he said, "You're staying grounded for the whole next year." He told me, "For the whole next school year, you're staying in your room." Well, he gave me a month grounding at first. And after about 3 weeks, my mom talked him into letting me go out. So I got out for a bit, and I threatened to run away and that. And then at first, when I went to school, I started doing well. And then he said, I was telling him I was doing good when I wasn't doing good, right? And so when I failed, he said the next year, you better do good. And then that's when we found out we were posted to Chatham, New Brunswick. My dad being posted means you're going to another base. So my dad was leaving Toronto and going to Chatham, New Brunswick, the base. And I said, where? They said Chatham, New Brunswick, and I'd never even heard of Chatham. So I looked it up on the map, and it had like, I don't know, population, 8,000 or something. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. I can't go there. And I wanted to run away. I threatened to run away, but eventually when it came down to the move, I moved with them. I went to New Brunswick. And because I had failed grade 9 the year before, they put me in, there's, when you go into school there's basic, there's general, which is normal, and there's advanced. And they put me in basic for the first 3 months just to see how I do. And I did really well, so they moved me up to general, and I stayed in general for the rest of the time I was there, and I managed to graduate. But during that time, we got a call from my aunt out in British Columbia that my real dad had died, and he never talked to me, nothing, in the whole time since then. And I only had bad memories from the man. That's all I had. And so it never really bothered me because I never knew him. And I'm sorry to say, but I was okay with it because he went out the way he lived. He was going out with different girls at the time, and he would take a high dose of pills, and he'd call them and say, I took an overdose, and they'd call the paramedics, and they'd go over and save him, pump his stomach and save him or whatever, because he was feeling sorry for himself, drinking. And one of these times, one of his girlfriends, I guess, didn't believe him, and he had done it, and he never woke up, sort of thing, right? So my real dad committed suicide. I was 17, I believe, when it happened, and so that was pretty much my complete cutoff with that side of my family. I never had nothing to do with my family after that on that side, really. And so I did some dirt biking out in New Brunswick. There was things to do out in the woods, but there wasn't anything else to do but go to school, right? Because everybody went to school. So if you didn't go to school, there was nothing to do, right? And so I managed to go to school, and all of a sudden I was passing. I'm doing great. And so the prom, I asked this one girl to go to the prom, and I ordered the tux and the limo, and had everything set up and ready to go. And she, a week before the prom, about a week before the prom, I think it was, a week and a half, she called me and said, I'm back. I'm back with my ex, and he's going to be taking me to the prom. And I went, well, I already ordered the tux, the limo, everything. It's all, I can't get a date like this close to the prom. And she said, well, I'm sorry, I'm going with my ex. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I just canceled the limo, lost the deposit, stuff like that, right? And I wrote my last exam in the morning, like 2 days later. And I left that night on the train back to New Brunswick. I didn't even stay for my prom. I just went back. I mean, back to Toronto. I didn't even stay for my prom in New Brunswick. I just left, and I went back to Toronto, and I worked for the summer, and it wasn't working out for me there. I was finding a hard place to find a place to live. I went and stayed with my brother at first, but his girlfriend was highly abusive. She used to beat the crap out of me. I didn't like watching that. But she was a tough woman. She grew up with like 5 or 6 brothers, and they were all fighters, and they taught her how to fight, and used to pick on her and make her tough, right? And she wasn't all there. I think something snapped when that happened, right? When they were so tough on her, and she used to beat my brother up, and but he also on his part, my brother and I made a vow when we were kids that we would never touch a woman. From what my dad had done, still remember making that promise, like in the closet. We made that promise again and again. So we've never touched women, him and and we weren't gonna. And I just I was proud of him for that, but it kind of sucks to watch your brother get beat up, right? So him and I got in a big fight anyway, and he kicked me out, and I didn't have anywhere else to go in Toronto, so I went back to New Brunswick. And my dad had got posted again. He moved on to Shelburne, Nova Scotia. So my parents weren't in New Brunswick when I went back. I just had friends there from school. And so I went back and collected POGI, or unemployment, for a year. And then I didn't know what to do, so I was all worried one night and drunk at my sister's, and I took a whole bunch of pills in her bathroom. And they called the cops in an ambulance and took me to the hospital and popped my stomach and everything. And in the morning, I talked to a counselor and the padre, or the priest, and I told him that I didn't have any suicidal tendencies anymore, and apologized to my sister and let her know I was going to be okay. And her boyfriend said, "Well, why don't you join the military, Jimmy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe I should." So he said he took me out on a motorbike in March, on the back of his motorbike in New Brunswick in March. It's freezing. There's about 3 feet of snow on the ground. And we had to go to Bathurst, New Brunswick, from Chatham, which is about 140 kilometers, I think, each way. So I was on the back just freezing. But we made it there and back. I had to go 2 or 3 times. And I took the aptitude test and passed. And then anyway, I managed to get in, and I managed to go as an MSc op after some changes, same as my stepfather. He was an MSc op, which means a trucker, a mobile support equipment operator, which is a trucker. So now I was off in the military, and I'm back on my feet again, thinking positive, that things are going to be all right. So I said, I just got to get through this. So I went to my parents' house in Shelburne, Nova Scotia, because my dad said he could drive me to boot camp. Then was in Nova Scotia. So he gave me a lift down to boot camp, and I made it through boot camp, and went to my trades training in Borden, Ontario, which I got through. And then my first posting, or the first base I was sent to, was Lara, Germany. Now I was 20 years old, and I got there in Germany, and I didn't know anybody, and I tried to go to the junior ranks mess to have a drink, and it was Friday, and the guy wouldn't let me in the front door in the masked corporal because he said I looked too young, and I was in uniform, right? And I said, but I'm in the military. And he said, you still look too young, and he wouldn't accept my military ID. I said, are you kidding me? And he said, no, you can't come in, you just look too young. I said, come on. So I went and I got the MPs, which are military police, which are right there. And they came over and said, yes, he's old enough, let him in. And so I was all embarrassed. And then when I went in there, and then I got a piece of the first night, and I came out, and the barracks was where I was staying was just off the base. and I walked up to the lights, and there was no cars this way, and I had a red light, but it was just a T junction coming off the base, and you go left or right. So, and the barracks were right there. So I looked to the left, there was no cars. Looked to the right, there's a car way down there, but I forgot it was Germany, and there's no speed limit, and that was a secondary autobahn. So I go walking across the street, and then I hear a horn, I look up, the car's right there. So I dove, and I had the pizza in my hand, and I hit the ditch, and the pizza slid to one end, and I opened it, and the pizza was all to one side, and I looked up at the sign, and it was German, and I didn't understand it, and that was the loneliest day of my life right there, because I was halfway around the world, didn't know anybody, and had a beat up pizza, and just didn't know what I was doing, what I was gonna do, what was gonna happen to me. So I went home. It was a really lonely night, and then I went back over to the mess the next day because I only had one or two beer the first time, and I went over and to have one or two beer again, and a guy at the bar I was at the bar, and he kept saying, "You ought not to be in here," and I didn't want to turn around, and everybody was at this table. They call it the stand tish table, the regulars table, and it was a long table right by the bar, was packed with people, and he kept saying, "Hey, you at the bar, you old enough to be in here?" And I wouldn't turn around, and the lineup was getting shorter. I was waiting to get my beer, and then finally he said, "You at the bar, Pipsqueak, you old enough to be in here?" And that made me mad. So I turned around and I said, "You old enough to count the rings on my dick?" And everybody went quiet. And the guy that was saying it stood up, and he was huge. And I went, "Oh, shit." And I turned around facing the bar, and it had all mirrors, right? And I see him go by this way in the mirrors. And then the guy that I got to know later, the bartender, as he was coming around, he's like, "Corky, we don't want no trouble in here, just don't be causing no trouble." And I'm thinking, "Oh, I'm dead, right? I'm dead." And he come up to me and he tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around and looked up at him. And he said, "If you're old enough to stand up, you're old enough and man enough to stand up to me, I'm old enough and man enough to buy you a beer." And I said, "Okay." So he bought me a beer, and his name was Corky Furlot. He's a big linesman that means they do electrical in the military. And he asked me to come sit with him at the table. Actually, he got this tattoo for me in Amsterdam. It says Spike on it because they started calling me Spike. Because you remember the cartoon with the little dog, bulldog, and the big dog, and the little dog is following the big dog, and then at the end, the big dog's following the little dog. So that's what he used to say to me. "Hey, Spike, hey, Spike, want to go chase some cars?" I say, "Yeah, shut up," and hit him, right? And it was a joke. Everybody laughed, right? Because he's so big. And so he asked me to sit down with him. We became friends, and it took off for me right there, because after that, they invited me back the next day. But the alcohol helped me come out more. And I bloomed in the alcohol, right? And I started drinking every day because one of the Stammtisch with the regulars was there, one or another, right? So I started drinking heavily, and in Germany, they pushed the beer, right? The higher ups are like, "Yeah, go ahead, drink, 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 drink." Me as a trucker, I was allowed to drink a 26 bottle of Bailey's and coffee a day and still drive. I could have that in my truck every day. We used to call it Bailey's and coffee, right? Trucker coffee, we called it. I could do that every day if I wanted to. And you drink a 26er of Bailey's, and you're feeling it. I don't care who you are. You're feeling it. And then I'm driving a big 10-ton truck with RTFL and trailer down the Autobahn. Come on, this truck is huge, And anyway, so I did my time in Germany, and I went really good after that. I made some really good friends, had great times. I went and toured some places, skied in Verbier, Switzerland, La Bresse, France, a lot of good places, skied, world-renowned places. Had a great time. And then I came back, and I was posted to Edmonton, Alberta. So I came back on what they call a house hunting trip. So they sent me back early. I was posted in June or July, and they sent me in March to go look for a house. And I didn't want a house. I just wanted to go on a vacation. Some of my friends were there in Edmonton. And one of the guys, Gary Philippou, he was with me. Oh, pardon me. Sorry, I'm dry. Sorry, but a friend of mine, Gary Philippou, was a trucker with me in Germany, and he was posted there the year before. So I went to see him and that, and then I went and picked up my brother, who was in southern BC here, and drove him up north to Burns Lake, where my sister lives and still lives. And so we could get together, us three older kids, and my younger brother was in the military now, and he was back in Cold Lake. But anyway, I wanted to get us three to have a vacation, so I picked up my brother, went up to my sister's, and we were drinking. And my sister said, Jimmy, after a couple of days, she goes, Jimmy, I gotta tell you a secret. Now, up to that point, I thought my stepdad was like a god. To me, he walked on water because he raised me. He gave me a dad. Everything he did to raise. He was 20 years old. And he gave up his life to raise us, you know. And I thought there was nothing I wouldn't do for him. So my sister says, Jimmy, I got something I want to tell you, but I want you to promise me that you won't say anything or do anything. And I said, okay. And he goes, you can't tell this person what I'm going to tell you. And I said, well, Paula, you want me to promise before I hear it? And she said, yes, you have to, Jimmy. So I said, okay, I promise. I gave my word. And then she said that my stepdad had been molesting her the whole time. And I couldn't, I didn't believe it. I said, there's no way, Paula. And she says, it's true, Jimmy. And then everything made sense. Why she ran away from home at 15 years old and got married at 16. Everything made sense. Everything fell into place, and I knew it was true. And that destroyed me. But it slowly ate away at me, right? Because I couldn't say anything. And the one thing that I despise in this world are molesters. Molesters of children, molesters of women. There's something in me that just does not like them. I despise them because they ruin lives. They don't just have an event. They traumatize whatever it is. Be an adult, a child, whatever it is, for life. So I don't like them. And now I just found out that the man that I idolize the most on this planet is one. And I knew it was true. I knew it was true. Because it fit. It really did. It explained everything that I couldn't understand up there. So, I couldn't say nothing to him. So that summer I moved to Edmonton. I kept my mouth shut, and I moved to Edmonton.